You know, when you look to the book of Acts and you look to that singular example of the Apostle Paul, you see at times Paul running right into controversy, and at other times you see Paul basically, being led out of the city in a basket from a wall. And you look at that and you say, how can this one man give us these examples? Well, here's the issue. Paul never fled from preaching the gospel. And so Paul never picked a fight with the authorities. That would be a misreading of the book of Acts. But Paul never let any authority shut down the preaching of the gospel. As he will write later in one of his letters, you can put me in jail, I'm going to preach the gospel. You can set me free, I'm going to preach the gospel. So what we learn from the early church, but specifically from Paul, is that we are never to just basically antagonize the authorities. As a matter of fact, you'll have the New Testament teaching that we are to, at all pains, short of failing to preach the gospel, being at peace with all men. But Paul was not afraid to face the full opposition of the Roman Empire. And let's understand what we're talking about there. There was an opposition that Paul knew would very likely lead to his death. And we know that by the end of the book of Acts, Paul is in prison. But even then, we are told that he's preaching the gospel unhindered until that moment when we know he actually was martyred for the Christian faith. So when we're looking at the Apostle Paul, and when we're looking at the book of Acts, there is the example we are to stand firm in the gospel. And we're not to be antagonistic, but we're not to let antagonistic authorities ever shut down the preaching of the Word of God, the testimony to the gospel of Christ.